Hello and welcome back to Polar Night. We'll be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is after Garret basically met everyone that's going to be on the expedition. Well, most everyone. He still hasn't been properly introduced to 3 people. And pretty much he's having second... Well, he's not having second thoughts yet, but he will. And... Well, right now, at least he's met some nice people, I guess you could say. And he's going to be stuck with them for the next 2 weeks, so he better like them at least. And what else? Obviously, this setting is gonna take place in pretty much ice with no one around to help. And given what we can see in this main menu screen video thing, there's murder afoot, or at least that there's something that's gonna happen. There's blood on the hull of the ship. There's a light with an axe. There's this guy looking scared. Although he always looks scared, so, that's more of a quality that he has than an indication of where the story is going. But yeah. Anywho, so I guess we'll just continue and see what happens. Pretty nice, huh? It's not bad, actually. I wasn't really sure what to expect. At least we might be able to see some neat stuff during the search. Wildlife, maybe an aurora. I wouldn't count on seeing much. This time of the year, we'll probably get polar night. Polar night? Basically when night lasts longer than 24 hours. Besides, this isn't a sightseeing tour. We're here for a reason. Sounds weird. Ugh, and after I brought my camera with me. A pang of irritation hit me at his whining. What did he think this was? A fucking holiday? Anyway, let's get going. I, for one, want to see what Sherif has to say for himself. Yeah, same. The 3 of us made our way up and back towards the lounge. As we re-enter the lounge, June was behind the bar stocking some bottles. She gave us a cheeky grin as we passed. Sitting on the nearby sofa was Joseph. He had a cup of coffee before him, and he was watching the gathering in the conference room with interest. Everyone was gathered in the adjoining dining room, seated around the large table with Sherif sat at the head. There was a smattering of conversation when we arrived. Sherif watched us with an intense look, his fingers steepled before him. Even with his stony expression, I could sense the irritation from him. I took a free seat beside the tigress at the top of the table on Sherif's right. Gail sat on the other side of her. Stefan sat beside Aaron, who gave him a courteous smile and a nod. Now that we are all present... He gave Stefan and Gail pointed looks. I felt like a scolded student being given a talking to by my teacher. I am sure you are all curious about the specifics of this expedition. Most of all, the information about the location of the Aran. The room was so quiet I could swear I could hear my own heartbeat. As such, I will. One moment, Sherif. All eyes went to Gail. Why don't we all introduce ourselves? I don't know about anyone else here, but I've never met any of you before today. It was hard to tell Sherif's thoughts from his expression. He seemed to have a permanent look of irritated boredom. Before he could say anything else, the stag leaned forward onto the table. Great idea. I'll go first. Rufus Dixon, pleased to meet y'all. My sister Hannah was the first officer. His baritone voice had a bit of a southern U.S. drawl to it. Despite his size, he radiated a warm friendliness. Pleased to meet you. All eyes moved to the next person along. With a nervous cough, Aaron spoke softly, barely a mumble. I'm Aaron Marsh. Carrie, my big sister was the navigator. Stefan, who had been fidgeting more and more, finally burst. Come on, what's what this was? They're still out there! All eyes turned to him. Even Tabby stopped fidgeting with her phone to stare. Sherif pinched the bridge of his muzzle with exasperation. Without skipping a beat, he leaned forward, gazing from face to face, as if daring anyone to contradict him. Stefan Golubev and my big bro is alive, and I'm gonna bring him home. Only the soft sounds of June stalking the bar could be heard in the silence that followed, and even that halted when June realized that the clinging was drawing everyone's attention. Everyone now turned to look at Tabby, who was still staring at Stefan. When she sensed all eyes on her, she immediately leaned back in her seat with a disinterested expression. Guess it's me, Tabby. Mom was the ship's doctor. At this, she turned to glare at Gail. And for the record, this was all Gail's idea. I didn't want to be here, so the sooner this is over, the better. The look between them could have killed. I suspected Gail was regretting this introduction business. Well, I'm Gail Waters. Mom was... She caught herself, returning the contemptuous look Tabby gave her. Is Dr. Emma Waters, as Tabby said, who is my sister, in case it wasn't obvious. The two stared each other down. Even Sherif glanced between the two of them as though half expecting one of them to lunge for the other. Thankfully, the tigress cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. She wore a slightly smug expression, arms folded, her piercing eyes moving over each speaker in turn. I'm Dana. Captain McGregor was my father. And assuming Sherif wasn't blowing smoke up our collective asses, and we find the iron, I will prove that he wasn't responsible for her disappearance. She shot Sherif a sharp look. Unfortunately for her, he looked utterly unmoved. In fact, he looked bored, if anything. That was when I noticed everyone had turned their gazes to me. I felt my skin burn and my pulse quicken. I hated being the center of attention. I turned my face so my scarred eye was harder to see, as pointless as it was. I'm Garret. Garret Reed. Pleased to meet you. I cringed at the quivering in my voice. My older brother was Connor Reed, a mechanic. When I saw Stefan and Gail shift uncomfortably, I realized that I'd said was. Their sad expressions triggered a twinge of guilt, and I couldn't meet their eyes. But the truth was, that's what I believed. This was a search, not a rescue. Now only Sherif remained. He stayed silent, his hands still steeped before him, as he stared at nothing in particular. Well? Very well. I am Professor Sherif Abdi. You may call me Sherif. And as my letter explained, I provided most of the funding for this expedition. A professor? What's your field? Anthropology. As for who I knew aboard, again, my letter made it clear. Could you remind me? It was a while ago. I could have sworn I saw a flicker of emotion through his stony expression. Professor Hagen. No way! You knew the guy in charge? I will explain if you could be quiet for a moment. Stefan looked like he wanted to say more, but a barrage of annoyed looks silenced him. Professor Hagen was my supervisor for my PhD. He was also a close friend. That is why I am here. That is as much as I am willing to say on the topic. Now, if we are all finished getting to know each other. He shot Gail a piercing look, making her shift uncomfortably in her seat. No one else looked interested in interrupting. I understand you all may be skeptical. Nearly 2 years' worth of concentrated search efforts for nothing. We all have put a great deal of money into this expedition. I assure you, I have planned the most efficient search pattern that will make the best use of our available time. How long will the search last then? Your letter didn't specify that. 2 weeks. Tabby audibly groaned. Great. A fortnight on this tub and we don't even get to sightsee. But the inquiry searched the area around the Iron's last radio position. No trace was ever found. True, radio contact seemed normal at the time, but when you examine the GPS... Wait a minute! All eyes turned to Stefan, who had an intense look in his eye. Radio contact was not normal. They reported someone had been killed, and their instruments were behaving strangely. I remember the recordings from the inquiry. The captain mentioned the crew was having discipline issues. So what? We've been over this. Seems to me they got lost. Aaron visibly seethed at her insinuation, while Rufus put his hands on the table, barely containing his anger. My sister would never have allowed anyone on the crew to endanger the ship, not in a million years. And there's no way Carrie would have gotten them lost. I guarantee it. Mom mentioned something about... Everyone started raising their voices at once, each protesting to their point where I couldn't even make out any one person was saying. Enough! His normally formal, quiet voice boomed out, startling everyone. He was stood, hands placed flat on the table, as he stared down at us. We all fell silent. Even June, all the way over at the bar, had frozen in the middle of placing a bottle on the shelf, seemingly afraid of clinking the glass. I am not here to relitigate the inquiry, and I don't care about blame. If you wish to repeat the same arguments of the last 2 years, do so on your own time and do not waste mine. Is this acceptable? It wasn't a question so much as a dare. His sapphire blue eyes scanned each of us in turn, as if challenging us to speak up. Even Rufus looked really uncomfortable under his unrelenting gaze. Splendid. And just like that, he sat back down, hands steeped once more, as if nothing had happened. A few uncertain looks were exchanged across the table. As has been pointed out, the Aron's last radio report placed it on its planned route. However, he pulled a large roll of paper from the bag beside him and rolled it out over the table. It was a map of the Arctic region, with slash bar near the bottom left. Longyearbyen was marked with a black cross, with a dotted line leaving to the north, bringing it towards Greenland. I'd seen this so many times before. Countless reconstructions, simulations, the path of the Aron's voyage. But there was a second red dotted line and a series of red X marks, with one large blue X. I have good reason to believe that Professor Hagen may have used a different route. We all exchanged confused looks. Different how? How do you know? Because he left behind an itinerary for a second route for the expedition in case they hit multi-year ice. The Aron was rated for first-year ice. What's the difference? First-year ice is ice that's less than a year old. Multi-year ice is potentially several years old. Multi-year is thicker than first year, enough that ships need to be rated specifically for it. It can be harder than concrete. More than enough to hull a hull. Hagen understood that if the chosen route was untenable, they'd require an alternative. However, the second route was quickly irrelevant because an ice report suggested it would not be a problem. Wait, you're saying you found some note from Hagen saying, hey, if you don't find us where we're supposed to be, try here. Are we supposed to believe that? Hagen left the itinerary with the University of Bergen's Björknes Center for Climate Research as a routine procedure when planning the expedition. But that alone wouldn't be enough, while their last radio report put them here. He tapped an X marked on the original official route, close to Greenland. Several GPS signals placed them nowhere near the official route. This still sounds shaky. The inquiry said that their GPS was faulty. They could have been lost. I am not finished. The inquiry noted that while most GPS data placed them on the official route, several odd GPS signals placed the Arons hundreds of miles away from its supposed true position. These were assumed to be errors. But if you match those coordinates... His finger tapped the red X on the map. We all peered closely at the red dotted line, and sure enough, the marks tracked almost perfectly along the new red path. I believe the Aron chose to use the second route for some reason. It might have been a last-minute change due to the changing weather or ice. Or it was a cover story. The first route was a trick, the second was the true course all along. All eyes glanced over to the possum. He had an intense look in his eye as he stared at the chart. Sherif gave him a withering look. Please do not jump to conclusions. We do not know whether radio report differs from these GPS coordinates or why these odd coordinates exist in the first place. Maybe they were lost. Aaron tutted and folded his arms. Or their equipment was faulty. Regardless, the fact that these inexplicable coordinates match the second route perfectly is simply too much of a coincidence. If you have this new information, why not bring it to the authorities? Why get us to fund this trip? I did. He hissed the words with a ripple of anger beneath his otherwise cool exterior. The authorities did not feel it sufficient to organize a new search. This was my last option. Believe me, if I had the means to fund this that did not require expending so much of my own money, or yours, I'd have taken it. The vast majority of the funds for this trip was hiring the sonar apparatus we will be using to search the seabed once we arrive at our search locations. Your contributions helped with chartering this vessel. But I believe I've said enough. We will depart in an hour. If you are having second thoughts, now is the time. It will be approximately 3 days before we reach the first search area. While you are free to make use of the ship's facilities and hospitality, please remember you are here for a reason. But for now, are there any more questions? There was a tense silence. Sherif scanned each of us with that piercing gaze. Very well. If you all don't mind, I need to discuss the journey with the captain. And with that, he rolled up the chart, scooped up his notebook, and strode up the stairs leading up to the upper deck. For a while, no one moved as we all seemed to be absorbed in our own thoughts. Everyone looked somber. Despite Sherif's explanation, I had so many questions I didn't even know where to begin. Sherif finding this new itinerary was bringing up a lot of questions, as bizarre as Stefan's beliefs were. I couldn't help but agree with him that something felt very off. We were shaken from our thoughts when Tabby finally pushed back from the table noisily and walked sullenly towards the lounge. Gail quickly followed. Glad to see that we're all friends now. Tabby! Despite her snark, it did at least seem to drain some of the tension. Rufus stretched loudly, cracking his knuckles and popping his shoulders. Well, came this far. I'm in. Same. If we find the iron, at least I can know for sure. We will find it, and we'll bring them home. You'll see. Evening, guys. So, I hate to bore you all, but I need to give you a safety brief before we do anything else. Legal requirements for your safety. You get the gist. Her expression hardened from her usual sunny disposition as she began to explain to us the safety procedures and survival information. She gave a well-rehearsed speech about the ship's muster points, procedure for emergencies, where to find fire extinguishers. But it is extremely important that you wear your personal flotation device in the event of an emergency, and whenever you are instructed to do so by the crew. If you fall into the Arctic Ocean, cold shock can kill you in as little as 1 minute. If you find yourself in the water, you need to resist the urge to panic. Get your breathing under control and don't thrash about unnecessarily. You will then have roughly 10 minutes of useful movement to get yourself out of the water or into a stable situation where you are floating before hypothermia sets in. After that, you have about an hour before you become unconscious, provided you are wearing your PFD. You may even have about another hour before your heart stops from the cold. Every effort will be made to rescue you if you fall overboard, so you must remember these rules to maximize your chances of surviving if you end up in the water. Are we all clear? With such dire warnings, all the tension of before came rushing back. I swallowed nervously and gave a nod. It hadn't really sunk in just how dangerous this voyage could be. Everyone else seemed to be equally discomforted, but everyone gave a nod or a grunt of acknowledgement. Good. I'm sure you won't need this information, but it's important that you know. While I have your attention, here's your handbook. It contains all the safety information that I just told you, a guide to the ship and its facilities. Rules? You get the picture. Breakfast is served between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m., lunch is 12 noon to 1:30 p.m., and dinner is between 4:30 and 6 p.m. Any questions or concerns? I'm your woman. And just like that, her bright grin was back. I'm starving. I hope you got some decent chow. The chef is currently preparing a late supper. Please be patient. In the meantime, I can fix you folks a nightcap. Well, that has to be the best damn idea I heard all day. Damn straight. Sounds like a plan. No thanks. Although I wouldn't mind a snack. I haven't eaten since lunch. I'm pretty hungry too. I'll wait for something to eat. June moved behind the bar as Dana, Rufus, and Aaron took up seats on the bar stools. Gail and Tabby took a seat on the sofa where Joseph had been sitting, who was nowhere to be seen. I suppose being the possum meant that he was pretty busy. Stefan had wandered over to the hatch that separated the bar area from the kitchen. I wasn't super tired right now, and having been told that I had time to leave this ship before she departed, I found myself seriously considering leaving. But when I thought of how much money Mom had poured into this trip, ugh, my mind was racing. Maybe chatting a bit would help loosen me up. I still knew almost nothing about Dana or Rufus except who on the errand they were related to. Aaron seemed a bit oblivious, and I could already tell that he was a flirt. Seemed to be a decent sort, though. Sensitive about a sister too, clearly. Stefan was by the open hatch to the kitchen, watching the chef work. He was a weirdo, but friendly enough. Plus, I was fascinated by his apparent rock-solid conviction that the Aaron crew was alive. And then there was Gail and Tabby. Gail was lovely, but I couldn't wrap my head around her conviction, like Stefan, that the Aaron crew was still alive. Tabby was a bit of a brat. I didn't much like her, but based on what she had said, she'd been dragged into this voyage by Gail, despite seemingly accepting their mother was almost certainly dead. I could emphasize with that at least a little bit, I suppose. I glanced at the clock. I had time to chat a bit, maybe get the others' opinions on Sherif's plan. Who do we speak with? Let's talk to my least favorite character so far. Stefan was watching through the open kitchen hatch, staring at something within. As I got closer, there was a flash of orange and a whoosh. Cool! As I got close, I saw the chef working his magic on a wok full of chunks of something, flipping it with a bright plume of flame. Stefan seemed mesmerized by it. I mean, it was pretty cool. My cooking skills amounted to stuffing whatever into a pot and stewing the living daylights out of it. Hey, how are you? As I reached out to touch him, he jolted so much that you'd think I tasered him. Gah! Gah! Don't sneak up on me like that. I nearly had a heart attack. Damn, man, so did I. We stared at each other for a few minutes before bursting into laughter. You need to relax more. You need to wear a bell around your neck so that you don't just sneak up on people. I wasn't sneaking. He cut me off with a loud snort, chuckling at my indignation. I found myself laughing, especially at the mental image of wearing a bell. Isn't it cool? I love the way that they can do that, just flip stuff like that. It's pretty cool, yeah. I wonder if it's just showing off. Heh, maybe. So, what did you think? Of Sherif, I mean. What do you mean? You don't think it's a little convenient? He knows the leader of the expedition, claims he's a friend, and just when the official search dries up, suddenly he finds a note from Hagen pointing out exactly where he is? Coincidence? I suppose? Come on, dude. Do you believe everything you're told at face value? Mate, why would he lie? I don't know, but that doesn't mean that he isn't. He gave me a frustrated look. Never mind, I'm too hungry to explain. As if emphasizing his point, his stomach gave a loud growl. Alex always made the best goulash, what I wouldn't give for a bowl right now. Your brother, the cook, yeah? Yep, with him cooking, I can only imagine what amazing chow the crew get. I could swear I could almost see drool on his lips. He sounds cool. Bet your mom and dad appreciated having a good cook around. His bright smile and happy gaze melted away. They died when I was young. My stomach clenched and my own smile vanished. God damn. Oh, mate. I'm so sorry. No, it's fine. You didn't know. My bro raised me for most of my life, so we're super close. I can cook a mean borscht because of him. Plus, he got me into lighters too. Oh, he collected? Yeah, it's how I know about your Elisorn. That's a pretty specific interest, if you don't mind me saying. And you don't even smoke, am I right? Nope, never did, and neither did Alex. I just find them fascinating. He was a strange one, but he seemed like a decent type, although my curiosity was building to the point where I couldn't hold in my question anymore. I was meaning to ask, if you don't mind, of course, but why are you so convinced that they're alive? His expression was odd. Not upset, more pensive. Have you ever heard of the Fiala expedition? Inwardly, I grimaced, bracing myself for a dose of crazy. No? It was an expedition to reach the North Pole that took place at the turn of the 20th century. It failed, though. The ship got crushed in ice. But despite that, the expedition lost only one crew member, despite being trapped on the ice for nearly 2 years. Can you imagine 2 whole years with an early 20th century ship in the Arctic? Now imagine what the crew of the Aran could survive with on a modern ship. All of its supplies and technology? Diesel-powered generators, tinned food, survival equipment? Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that she couldn't have sank, right? He gave me a dirty look. You think that a ship that size and that modern would just sink? Why not? You don't think modern ships sink all the time? The Aran has state-of-the-art emergency equipment. Didn't you pay any attention to the inquiry? It has detachable beacons with GPS, designed to transmit if they are submerged. If they went down, something would have been left behind to tell us. The fact that they didn't means that wherever she is, the Aran is afloat. I would stake my life on it. Judging by the death glare he gave me, I believe it. Alright. I held up my hands, placatingly. Look, just trust me on this, okay? I've done my research. Believe me, the Aran went missing for a reason. Oh no. Professor Hagen isn't a climate scientist. He's an anthropologist. Why would he lead a mission to investigate glacial melting? He doesn't add up. I've done it. I've set him off. If he starts talking about the Jews or the Rockefellers, I'm out of here. Look. I want to have a wander around. I'm not sure if I'll be staying on board, so just want to get a feel for the place before I decide, you know? Oh, yeah, of course, but I hope you stay, you know? Thanks, man. See you later. He gave me a cheeky grin, waved, then turned to stare through the kitchen hatch once more. God, when is dinner ready? Yeah, I'm recording, right? Yeah, thank God. Let's talk to Gail and Tabby. The 2 sisters were sitting around the same round table, but with a hefty gap between them. Gail was nestled in the bend of the couch, while Tabby was a good couple of feet apart from her. Shockingly, Tabby was futzing with her phone, while Gail was staring off at the bar absently, clearly fuming. Gail's legs were crossed, her hoof bobbing up and down in clear agitation. I gingerly stepped closer. Gail didn't even notice me until I was almost standing directly in front of her. Garret! I'm sorry, I was... No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you. I gestured to the far end of the sofa. May I? Don't be silly. Sit. She brightened immediately, patting the seat next to her. I shimmied between the table and the sofa, plopping down a respectful distance from Gail. I don't bite, Garret. I don't know. I wouldn't want to tangle with those horns. I don't have a spare eye anymore. We both chuckled and she scooted closer to me anyways. Not quite touching, but certainly pretty close. It's a nice ship, isn't it? June says it's normally for touring the Arctic, but they have some nice facilities too. A sauna, a small gym. They even converted part of the crew lounge to a sort of cinema. Really? I hope the crew aren't too upset about that. Nah, June says that there's only 5 crew aboard. There's more than enough room. I raised an eyebrow. 5? Isn't that a little light for a ship this size? Really? You think so? I mean, June is a steward, I think. Then there's Joseph, the possum. Then there's the chief too, so that's more than half the crew already. I'd imagine the captain and the first officer are on the bridge. Even for a ship this size, I'd have expected at least a few more deck crew. Joseph must be run off his hooves. Yeah, now that you mention it, it does seem weird, especially if we're going to be doing search and rescue. Rescue. I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from asking about that. Tabby rolled her eyes but said nothing. On that topic, what did you make of Sherif's plan? Well, if what he says is true, it's possible that the official search missed them. But it strikes me as odd that this Hagen guy left behind an alternative route that Sherif just found. just as the official search ended. Wouldn't the university have known about it? Said something earlier? You think he's lying? Well, I wouldn't go that far, it just seems strange. But I don't think it matters much anyway. I mean, it's been 2 years. Gail's expression flickered ever so slightly. It was obvious where I was going with this, and she decided to cut to the chase. Garret, you don't have to tell me how hopeless it sounds. Believe me, I think about it every day. But if you don't hold on to hope, then what? Mom is just gone. Nothing to bury, nothing to mourn. Though her expression was stoic, I could hear the slight break in her voice. Her bright eyes flickered away from mine, unfocused. I could very much understand. Many days, weeks, and months with Mom. Watching her cycle between bawling despair and catatonia gave me more than my fill of the grieving process. I mean, don't you want to know what happened to your brother? At the very least, to know for sure one way or another? I guess. She noticed my hesitation and paused for a moment, looking into my eyes until I couldn't meet her gaze. You didn't get along with him, right? I continued to stare off at the floor, hugging myself under the guise of folding my arms. The pit in my stomach worsened, and the prospect of just quitting this trip became ever more tempting. But before I could answer, Tabby cut in with a loud tut and sigh. Leave him alone. The look on Gail's face could have killed. I've seen her angry during the meeting, but this was something else. I found myself shrinking back from her. Trust me, Garret. I've had this conversation 100 times now. You'll never get through to her. Nobody asked you. She hissed the words, her fist balled up. She was almost trembling with rage. Of course, just like you didn't ask if I wanted to come along on this fucking trip. Tabby. The warning in her voice made my fur prickle. I could hear her seething, but Tabby had clearly had enough. You think I don't care about Mom? You think I want to never see her again? Not have a body to bury? I raised my hand in the futile attempt to placate her, venom dripping from her words, and her glare was fixed on her sister. What I don't want is to keep picking at this fucking wound for the rest of my life. She jumped to her feet, glaring at Gail, and for the briefest moment, I was scared that they were going to start throwing punches. But thankfully, I think, she spun around and stormed out towards the cabins. Once again, the air went frigid, as all eyes followed Tabby, then focused on us, but mainly Gail. Her eyes remained fixed on the door Tabby had left through, gazing daggers and apparently oblivious to the fact that everyone was now staring. The dire warning June had given of the icy depth of the Arctic waters sounded like a fantastic evening plan if it meant leaving the situation. I gave an awkward cough. No effect. I swear I could hear her teeth grinding. I gingerly reached out, terrified I'd lose fingers. Gail? That seemed to snap her out of it. She took a moment, scanning the room and realizing that she was the center of attention. Sorry, everyone. It's been a stressful time. Everyone turned back to what they were doing, and the smattering of chat started anew. Gail and I sat in awkward silence for a moment, her gaze locked on the table. She's not entirely wrong. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. She still didn't look up at me, instead staring unfocused. I did insist that she come with me. I saw tears starting to form as her voice broke. My mouth opened to speak, but anything I wanted to say caught in my throat. Really, what could I say to her? I didn't want... I'm sorry, Garret. Could you excuse me? I nodded numbly, and she stood before quickly walking to the door leading to the cabins. The chatting dimmed for a moment as she left, and I felt a few gazes on me. Well, that could have gone better. Realizing I was sitting awkwardly alone, I rose as quietly and nonchalantly as I could given I had been a foot from ground zero. I hoped that they were okay as much as I wanted to go after her to check. This really wasn't my fight. All that's left is to speak to Rufus, Aaron, and Dana. And I had to chase the son of a bitch across the base to get my pants back. Then the bastard threw them into a shower stall with a private and got them all soaked. So there I was, a rock call, my pants plastered to my ass and legs, and I was the only one naked from the waist up. The rest of them were laughing. Rufus already had a pint of beer. Aaron had cider, I think. Dana had a pint of beer, already 3/4 drained. Hey, mind if I take a seat? Oh, Garret, sure, you missed some crazy shit Rufus got up to. So the sergeant made me get down and give him 50, and as I got to 33, he made a ripping noise and mimed the splitting of something with his hands. I found myself mooning the entire squad. Dana and June burst into giggles while Aaron facepalmed. Let me guess, he gave you even more push-ups? 100, plus a lap around the base with my ass showing. I admit the mental image was both funny and kind of appealing. I joined in on the chuckling as June sidled along the bar towards me. Get you anything? She motioned towards the bar, stuck to the gills with a variety of spirits. My stomach tightened and my smile faded a little. No thank you. I don't drink. Seriously? What kind of man are you? I bristled, not appreciating her implications. A man who doesn't drink. I shot her a glare and she noticed I wasn't laughing, nor for that matter were the others. Christ, it was a joke. Lighten up. Hey, anyone else want something? I can whip up a real good pina colada. Oh, me please. I'll take a pint of that Norwegian beer. One Lurving, coming right up. Much obliged. I'll have another pint too. Alrighty. Hey, Garret. What was that commotion with those two about? He pointed to the table where they'd been sitting moments before. Sounded pretty intense. Gail didn't seem the type to get pissed like that. Admittedly, the argument had still left me a little bit shaken. They have, a disagreement about whether the crew is still alive. We gathered that much. Well, I don't know what to say. I don't even know how much I should say. It's really up to them to explain it if they want. They kinda look pretty upset. Might be a good idea to check in on them. Leave them alone. Like Garret said, if they want to explain, that's up to them. Besides, they're sisters. They'll figure it out on their own. I don't know. I hate it when ladies fight. Much rather hear them laugh than shout, you know? Oh, Rufus, you're such a sweetheart. You think women don't fight or argue? No, I just hate it when they do. Feels wrong. Kinda chauvinistic, don't you think? I guess. I am kind of a knight in that regard. You're thinking of chivalry, although the difference is pretty academic. Aaron, June, Dana, and I exchanged baffled looks, but ended up smiling anyway. It was a sort of sweet sentiment. I think. So, Dana, Captain McGregor was your dad? In response, she necked her beer, audibly gulping before thumping the glass down and sighing. Even Rufus already had emptied his first glass, gave her a funny look. Emphasis on was? Why? Well, I was just curious about him. The inquiry said some stuff about how he had problems with... Wasn't Carrie the navigator? A tense look shot between me and Rufus. June's smile faded again as she poured a pint, seemingly bracing herself for another argument. Yes? In other words, the one who was supposed to keep the iron, you know, not lost? Despite not being in physical contact, I could feel his body tense. A soft tapping against the bar stool hit my ears. His paw was rapidly bouncing off of it. It was an instinctual thing for Lappins, a stress and occasional a fear response to rapidly thump the ground with a paw, but judging by the sound of the grinding teeth, it was less stress and more fury. He turned, facing her fully with a murderous look in his eyes. The fuck are you suggesting? Oh fuck no, we are not having this bullshit. Calm down. What do you think I'm suggesting? Heard she had an eye for someone on board. You saw those position reports. Maybe Carrie was distracted. You say that again. Hey, guys, enough. Though his rich, deep voice lent weight to his command, it was June who took us all by surprise. That is more than enough, both of you! Even Dana seemed taken aback. For such a sweet-hearted girl, June barked like a drill instructor, fury etched on her face. If you are going to be at each other's throats, you can leave the ship right now. Do I make myself clear? There was silence in the room. Even Aaron's foot had stopped thumping. Perfectly. Fine. June's expression remained stern, but she still placed the beer in front of Dana. Before she had the chance to place Aaron or Rufus's drink, Dana gulped from her new pint, draining half in a single go. I glanced at Rufus, meeting his eyes. Clearly, his buzz had been very much killed. He gulped silently from his fresh pint. Aaron accepted his cocktail from June, but he simply poked at it, enthusiasm gone. With the mood very much ruined, I had no reason to sit here anymore. I excused myself. Let's go for a smoke. My nerves were jittery enough when I saw the clock above the bar. 12:18 a.m., just over 10 minutes before the ship departed. If I was going to back out of this, now was the time to decide. Trying to conceal my shaking hands, I fished my pack of smokes out of my pocket and glanced within. A single, white filter stared back. My last smoke. If you didn't count the stash I'd left in my room, that is. I felt a jolt of mid-panic. Would I had enough to last me the fortnight and change this trip was likely to take? If you're looking for more cigarettes, we sell them here at the commissary. June had obviously spotted me examining my pack. She gave me a little smile, eyes twinkling. Ordinarily, I'd be relieved to know where I can get more smokes, but my perfect excuse was now gone. I returned a strange grin and stalked off to the door to the deck. The bracing chill wind hit particularly hard after exiting the warm, cozy lounge. My nose would absolutely dry out in this weather. I wasn't looking forward to that. I remembered Mom and how I told her I would let her know my progress. Pulling my phone out, I typed, "On board the Sylvia, I'm okay. Love you. Talk to you tomorrow." I guess I could call, but I really wasn't in the mood for a conversation right now. At least, she knew I was here, safe and sound. I moved further up the deck, towards the bow. I slit the cigarette out of the box and took it between my lips. I brought my lighter up. Mother of... Why, of all times, did it suddenly decide that now was the perfect time to stop working? Cactela. The sounds of heavy hooves, boots, announced Joseph's arrival. I offered a small wave before going back to trying to light my smoke. He watched me with those piercing eyes as I awkwardly tried to light up. And then, just like that, it flicked into life. I drew on my smoke and felt its warmth fill me up. I couldn't remember ever having issues lighting up. I hope it wasn't an omen. With a heavy sigh, I blew a thick cloud of smoke from my muzzle and closed my eyes, allowing my muscles to loosen. The wailing of my addiction, indulged once again, quietened. Need a light? He stepped closer, leaning on the railing and gazing out at the port and the twinkling of Longyearbyne's lights. No, thank you. We stood there in silence for a while. I joined him in staring out towards the town. It was so calm and quiet, inviting. I should still have time if I ran to grab my pack. My mind bounced back and forth as I anxiously debated. You want to leave? Glancing at him, I noticed he was watching me intently. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. I took another draw and turned, leaning my hips against the railing. Am I that obvious? Like open book. His English was a little awkward and his accent was pretty thick, despite his size. His eyes held, warm, perhaps concern. With a heavy sigh, I blew a thick cloud of smoke from my muzzle. Why the fuck am I here? The rhetoric question echoed around the deck as I made a gesture with my hand, indicating the Sylvia. This is pointless. We're not gonna find them. Yet, you came anyway. My mom wants me here. As far as I'm concerned, my brother can go fuck. The bile rose up to my throat as I caught myself just before I could launch into a rant. Seriously, why was I saying this to a guy that I met an hour ago and barely said 2 words to? The bull seemed unmoved, watching me evenly with a sidelong glance before slowly turning to look back towards the lights of the town. We were quiet once more, but this time I got the impression he was in deep thought, considering what to say. The billowing mist from his nostrils suggested deep, slow, and even breaths compared to my own shallow and slightly elevated breaths. Thinking about Connor had gotten me worked up again. I could feel my tail curling upwards slightly in agitation. You should leave. That surprised me. He spoke with certainty, glancing sidelong at me once more. You sound pretty sure. This ship. He slowly nodded his head back towards the ship. Not good. Not good? Duh. He returned my baffled look with a blank expression, his eyes never leaving mine. Meaning, what exactly? He looked away, his gaze focusing on something in the distance. A few awkward moments passed without an answer. Well, you going to answer? For a few moments more, he was silent before slowly pushing himself back upright and turning to face me, towering over me. Just know, this trip is dangerous. You can't say more. I was about to demand a better explanation when the sounds of boots drew my gaze towards the ship's main deck. There you are. June was quick walking towards us, waving brightly. Glad I found you, Garret. The ship will be departing shortly. I wanted to check if you're still... okay? Goddamn, was that obvious to everyone? I gave Joseph a long glare, debating whether to challenge him again on his cryptic warning. But the giant just stared back, completely nonplussed. Yeah, just... I took another draw, looking wistfully back at the town. Having second thoughts about this trip? I don't know why I need to be here. If you find something, I'll know about it eventually when you return. I'm basically just a glorified tourist. Don't you want to be there if we find something, though? I don't want to pry, but if you really want to leave, I'll ask the captain to wait till you're disembarked. Really? Of course, Sherif likes to play the boss, but you all put your money into this just as he did. If the trip is delayed a few minutes, no one will care. They both watched me intently, June with a look of kindly concern, Joseph a more analytical look. It was difficult to discern his facial expressions. Casting a look back towards the town, its lights beckoning to me, memories of Mom came flooding back to me. Images of the misery and inconsolable grief she'd endured. Of the almost manic delight she'd shown when the fucking letter first arrived. A couple of weeks on a glorified tourist ship. If that's what it took. I took a final draw of my cigarette before stubbing it out on the metal bulwark. I came all this way. Might as well see it through, right? That's the spirit. Joseph watched me with a curious look before simply nodding and looking back out towards the town. What say we go inside? Dinner is ready. Don't want to miss out. Actually, I think I'll skip it. Pretty tired and I had a long flight. But thanks. Fair enough. Good night and sweet dreams. We walked together back into the lounge before parting ways at the doors leading to the cabins. The entire time, gnawing at the back of my mind was a voice screaming that I should grab my bag and dash for the gangway. My stomach felt like it was going to empty itself all over the floor the entire way. The sense of building dread as my window of escape closed filled my thoughts the entire way back to my cabin. As soon as the door was closed, I locked it behind me and leaned my head against the cold wood. Losing my opportunity to leave was weighing heavily. Now I was in for the long haul. Resentment bubbled inside of me. I was taking potentially weeks out of my life to be a tourist on a search. The combined efforts of many ships, aircraft, and rescue organizations failed to turn up anything on. All for Connor. No, Mom asked me to do this, knowing for sure was all important to her. I turned, quickly stripping off my winter clothing. The interior of the ship was slightly chilly once I was naked, which is how I liked it. It's a lot easier to sleep when it's slightly too cold, when you can wrap yourself up in the covers. Then, when it's too hot, matted fur is no fun, when you already smell of tobacco. I sniffed my arm. My sense of smell was not what it once was, but I still reeked of the stuff. I kept reminding myself of the many reasons I quit smoking, but when the nerves hit, it was like being on autopilot. I decided to grab a quick shower. I was pretty pungent, even ignoring the smoke. Wearing thick winter clothes does work up a sweat. Grabbing my toiletries bag from my pack, I paddled into the small bathroom, once again grateful to have a cabin to myself. I didn't have to worry about someone barging in. The bathroom was tiny, just barely enough to fit the toilet, shower, and sink, kind of a sharp contrast to the bedroom. Space was a premium on board the ship, I guess, and I could imagine the tourists, typically renting the ship, would be spending most of their time taking in the Arctic. As soon as I flicked on the light, I saw a tall, skinny wolf staring at me in the mirror, or at least, one eye was. I looked like a freak. Among many reasons I avoided relationships, the scars on my right wrist were something I always kept covered, even though they were on the sides of my wrist rather than on the underside. I always worried people would confuse it with self-harm. It was a conversation I could absolutely do without. The fact that they were bite scars would only lead to more questions and... Ugh, I was reminded of that particularly insufferable workmate at my last job who would not stop asking about my eye. Part of the reason I grew out of my hair to cover it, even if technically it was against safety regulations. The scar running down my face over my left eye aligned almost perfectly with the middle, livid, furless skin scarred from the claw that robbed me of vision in that eye. And further down my muzzle, another scar, and unlike on my eye, this one was always in my field of vision. A constant reminder. Fuck. The familiar stinging began in my ruined eye. I fumbled for my bag, tears poured uncontrollably from my eye, and my face scrunched up in response to the pain. My hand pulled out and tossed the stuff within aside or onto the floor as I scrambled for the proxy. My hand touched a small bottle and I brought it out. The white-colored eye drops bottle came into focus. With practiced ease, I tilted back my head, forced open my eye with one hand, and squeezed several drops onto the scarred surface of my left eye. After a few moments, the drops took effect, and a cooling, soothing sensation washed away the pain. The trigger for the pain was still a mystery. Doctors suggested anxiety, weather, even my smoking. But I knew the ultimate cause. Son of a bitch. I threw the vial back in my bag. For the proximetacaine, I typically only need it every once a couple of weeks. I'd already needed to use it twice in a single day. I had a bunch of bottles to tide me over, but I felt a renewed pang of anxiety as I realized that I would need to be careful. 2 weeks in this weather might drain my supplies quickly. With the pain gone, I once again was able to stare at the wrecked, gazing gloomily back at me. Catching the scent of tobacco and sweat, I pulled a face. I couldn't put it off any longer. I scooped out the bottle of shampoo from where I tossed it aside, hunting for my eye drops. Specially formulated for canines. The shower was kind of cramped, but at least everything looked pretty well maintained. As the hot water poured over me, I felt the filth of a long sweaty trip and many smoke breaks slosh off of me. My eyes closed in bliss. I worked the shampoo into my fur and built a lather. Moving my hands through my fur, I worked the soap into my body and my hair, the soothing warmth loosening my taut muscles. I felt an ache near the base of my spine as my tail, which had been curled in agitation for God knows only how long at this point, finally sagged, relaxing as my body let go of the tension that had me so tightly wound up. I made sure to massage my tail, wincing as the chill-induced pins and needles reminded me of just how extreme the cold out here could be. Canines and Lupin's tail movements were largely instinctual and involuntary, except where the canid was particularly disciplined or self-aware. I wondered how my tail had come across to the others up until now. I ran my hands along its length, wringing it like a wet towel, and once again wincing as the feeling came back. The moment I'd nearly lost my temper back when we were walking to the Sylvia came rushing back, an intrusive thought that triggered a renewed pang of guilt. The way I'd snarled and bared my fangs at fellow person, even though nothing he'd done or said warranted it. It wasn't the first time that I hated every single time it happened. It was impossible to resist, though, an ingrained instinct like laughing or sneezing. When you feel that sharp surge of rage, it just wakes right up. The movie series Ryan Vang featured the suave, sophisticated, titular Timberwolf protagonist, a British M16 agent frequently tasked with saving the free world from cartoonish villains. One particular trait he had was the ability to suppress and fake his typical Lupin tails. Tail movement, snarl, and ear reflex, and fur bristling in order to appear collected and calm in any circumstance. Like many Lupins and canines, I'd idolized him and tried to emulate his behavior. I mean, who could resist a movie hero and his unflappily cool persona? Someone who could effortlessly control their instincts? Of course, it was a movie, and he was an actor. While every canine and Lupin knew that there were aspects of their physiology that they could somewhat control, they couldn't stop it entirely. At the end of the day, we just couldn't resist our deepest impulses. The soap had been working until my fur began to slosh off of me, carrying with it the grime and filth of a very long and arduous journey. The stench of tobacco rose off of me. Christ, did I really smell like this to the others? I washed until the scent was no longer detectable, which took longer than I'd like to admit. Stepping out, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, my bedraggled fur briefly distracted from my scarring. I pulled on a towel, warm straight from the rack, and began to dry myself. My mixed feelings about this trip were being quietly buried under a wave of fatigue. It had been a very long trip here. I finished off my evening routine by brushing my teeth and giving myself one final dose of eye drops for the night. I really didn't want to wake up to searing pain. As I re-entered what would be my bedroom for the next few weeks, the freshly made bed looked so inviting. My bag was still sitting on my bed, rummaged around for my phone charging cable. Fortunately, I'd remembered to bring a region adapter for the power socket. June mentioned breakfast was around 8:30. I decided to set my alarm for 8, just to give myself time to get my shit together. I wasn't a morning person. I pulled back the cover and half collapsed onto the slightly chilly sheets. Brief thoughts of what lay before us flickered through my mind before the sudden overwhelming exhaustion hit me. Within minutes, I was out like a light. I don't remember much from my dream. They tend to be bizarre and utterly nonsensical, with a disconcerting number of them involving me being at college again, but having skipped so many classes, there was no chance that I would pass my exam. Which didn't really make sense, as I was a pretty good student. My brain had ways of finding new and even more ingenious ways of torturing me, though. I slept lightly, drifting in and out of a restless sleep. I didn't sleep well in a new place, which was hardly unusual, but the gentle swaying of the ship in the water and the low hum of the engines added to an extra alien quality. That knot in my stomach lingered. A part of me was furious with myself for not demanding we turn back and let me off, but that would be an imposition on everyone else. I awoke fully, turning over in bed. It was pleasantly cool enough that I pulled the covers a little higher. It was obviously pitch black, though. Not even the dimmest moonlight came through the windows. As alien as it was, there was also a tranquil quality, out here for the next few days at least. I was at a complete liberty. No work, no obligations. The realization helped loosen the knot in my stomach a little, and I flipped onto my belly, nuzzling into the plump, cool pillow. The sharp female scream sent a jolt through my body. My eyes snapped fully open, for all the good that they would be in the inky blackness. My ears prickled up, the fur on my neck spiking as I strained to hear. It couldn't have been real, right? Instinctively, I reached over to the bedside light. My hands swatted at the wall, fumbling in the dark until I found the switch. Click. Nothing happened. Click, click, click. What the fuck is up with the lights? I pushed myself up and tried to disentangle my legs from the duvet. Somehow my attempts to kick them off only made it wrap around my paws. Get the fuck off! I finally freed myself and scrambled to my paws, suddenly realizing that I now had no idea where the door was. My eyes were adjusting slowly, and the vague outlines of objects started to coalesce. I stumbled to the door, arms outstretched just in case. I could already hear a commotion out in the hallway as my hand fumbled for the door lock. The corridor was just as dark. The ship may have had a power failure, which, being at sea, very much did not bode well. Who's there? Who screamed? Stefan? I saw the vague outline of the possum, who was also groping blindly in the dark. I guess his night vision wasn't as good as mine. Garret, where are you? I can't see a damn thing. Guys, it was Tabby. I heard her screaming. What in God's name is happening? The four of us called out in frustration. Even with my night vision, I could only barely see where they were. Rufus, just to your right. Their cabin door is right there. I reached out to grab Stefan's hand and Aaron's, then tugged them towards the big stag before they hurt themselves. A loud thump sounded from the door as Rufus hammered it with a meaty fist. Tabby? Gail? Y'all okay? We cluttered around the door, the scent of burnt lemons invading my nose. I couldn't blame them for being scared though. That scream had chilled my very blood. As I strained my ears, I could hear quiet voices, Gail and Tabby's, one hysterical and raised, the other soothing and soft. It's okay, Rufus. Everything's fine. Just, didn't expect the lights to go out. Didn't sound like everything's okay. Y'all sure you're fine? Yes, just, give me a moment, okay? Let me get decent. I heard more movement from the room just before a surge of humming rose in volume until... Gah! It felt like someone shot lasers into my eyeball, and judging by the reaction of the others, they didn't fare much better from the sudden light. It took a few moments for my good eye to adjust, but the more it did, the more the other guys came into view and... Well, goddamn. Dude, is this really the time? 2 twinks and a beefcake. I feel spoiled. Twink? Beefcake? Before we could give him a piece of our mind, the sound of the cabin door clicking open pulled our attention. I'm so sorry. I hope we didn't scare you guys. Oh. Well, aren't you fellas a sight for sore eyes? I know, right? Both Stefan and Rufus looked a little smug. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. My usual discomfort was showing my body was slightly offset by the approving looks from Gail and Aaron. You all sleep in your undies? I sleep naked, but I figure you wouldn't want to see my bits flopping around in an emergency. Oh, you figured wrong. Jesus Christ, can we all focus for a second? Gail, what happened? Tabby sounded really scared. Oh, right, well... She trailed off to the sound of the frantic footsteps hammering down the stairs from the upper deck. A moment later, June skidded into view, looking harried. Guys, I'm so sorry. Is everyone okay? She was breathing heavily, clearly having sprinted here. The fact that the 4 guys were standing here in our keks didn't seem to faze her. June, relax. Everything is fine. Tabby just got scared is all. Oh? I heard the scream. She glanced back at the cabin door for a moment. She has nyctophobia. A collective sigh of realization went up from our group, given how pitch black it had been. If the lights had suddenly failed, that would explain her panicking. Rufus, on the other hand, looked confused. Nycto what now? I'm sorry, that ain't contagious, is it? Everyone glared at him in disbelief. Hey, what's the deal? Did I say something wrong? Nyctophobia. It means fear of the dark. Rufus's look of confusion turned to a look of deep regret. Oh, I'm real sorry, Gail. I didn't mean nothing by it. Don't be silly, Rufus. No offense taken, and I appreciate you boys coming to check on us, really. But for now, I really need to be with Tabby. If you could just bear with us. I'm really sorry for alarming you all. Gail, if it helps, we have some battery-powered electrical lanterns. They last ages and have adjusted brightness. Those could help if the lights go out again. Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much, June. On that note, what exactly happened? Did we have a power cut? Oh, sorry. Sherif and the captain wanted to test the new sonar equipment, but it tripped the light circuit and, well, you know. Stefan looked like he was going to say something, but June clapped her hands and interjected. I'll come by your cabin in about 10 minutes with a lantern, Gail. I just need to update the captain first, so just bear with me, okay? And for the rest of you, I'm really sorry. I will make sure that the captain knows not to retry the test until the power system is prepared, okay? Rufus and Aaron both gave nods and grunts of approval, while Stefan seemed to be staring up at something on the ceiling. June gave a little wave before trotting back towards the stairs, then disappeared up towards the main decks. Okay, fellas, as much as I wish I could enjoy the view a little more, my little sis needs me. But seriously, thank you. She gave us a grateful smile, a small wave, and slipped back into her cabin, locking the door behind her. Now that we were left alone, I felt pretty exposed. Aaron was very much scanning us with hungry eyes, as though committing the sight to memory. Well, boys, don't know about you, but I'm bushed. Gonna hit the hay now. Ah, so soon? Stefan, however, was still staring at the ceiling, and now I traced his gaze to find what he was so interested in. So why didn't they come on? My eyes followed what he was focused on, a light marked with a red tape that was not currently lit. What do you mean? The emergency lights. Yeah, that's a good question. I ain't an expert, but aren't they supposed to switch on when the main lights fail? Exactly. So why didn't they? The engine never stops, so the power didn't go out completely. The tension in the air thickened as we each pondered the ramifications. Listen, I'm too tired to ponder this, but if y'all want to wait till morning, we can bring this up with the captain. Both Aaron and Stefan nodded in agreement. I made a mental note to also have a word with Joseph. We seemed to have something of a report, best I could tell, and as a bosun, he'd be one of the best people to ask about it. Plus, this ship, not good. Just know, this trip is dangerous. Can't say more. I was starting to think that there was a lot more to that warning. Alright, see you fellas in the morning, okay? Yeah, sure. Stefan continued his gaze at the emergency lighting, seemingly lost in thought before Rufus placed a huge hand on his shoulder and steered him back towards his cabin. Good night, Garret. Night. The lights in my room were still out, though this time because they were still turned off. Click. I stared at my bed, the evening's drama rather killing my sleepiness. Even knowing now why Tabby had screamed, it still sent a shiver up my spine to think about it. And now the question of the Sylvia's emergency lights not working left me with a lot of questions. I moved over to the bed before slowly clambering back under the duvet, my thin coat of fur not totally protecting me from the chill. I reached out to the switch for the main room lights and flicked them. Even as I was plunged back into darkness, my mind was still racing. I reached for my phone to check the time. 2:14. The knot in my stomach was there, sitting heavily as my thoughts raced. Now every tilt and sway of the ship beneath me, every stray noise caught my attention. With a deep breath, I closed my eyes and tried to push the events from my mind. I could deal with this in the morning. For now, I just needed rest. Thank you for playing. I hope you enjoyed this so far. If so, please consider contributing to our Patreon at... Oh, there's the link. Your support will help us to make this game even better. Also, I'd love any feedback, bug reports, and typos. You can find us on Twitter at PolarKnightVN. The character sprites and CGs are done by the wonderful Nert1W on Twitter. I regret I can't offer a release schedule right now, as I am a sole developer working on this in my spare time and funding it entirely by myself, plus any support from generous patrons. It is extremely important to me to ensure that the following updates have the correct assets in place to establish the right mood and atmosphere, and since Nerton is only human and my budget is limited, there is no specific date that I can offer for day 2. But I assure you that I am committed to this and will work on writing whenever I have the chance. If you would like a sneak peek at early builds, Patron gets the first access. Thank you again and hope you enjoy. Karras. So that was the first night, I guess you could say, because it's polar night. So the first update, I guess. Actually, no, this is the second update. because I read the first version of this, and then there was a sort of like a quality update for the first part, and it included the CG where you get to see Garret. So yeah, you actually didn't get to see who Garret was or how he looked until he released this new sort of update. Yeah. A quality of light update. But yeah. So as you can see, there is something strange that happened to the Aran. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing all of these not weird, all of these names wrong, so, bear with me. But yeah. There's something happened. Either the ship wandered into a Bermuda Triangle of the Arctic, or it sank, or there was a mutiny, or something. Also, the beginning, the prologue part, I guess you could say, what I got from it was Connor, who is the brother of Garret, was seeing his brother. At least either he was hallucinating him because he apparently had a wound in his stomach, and he was hallucinating his brother, who he probably realizes wasn't very fond of him. So that's why the character was very antagonistic to him. And obviously, as the story progresses, we get to see that Garret is, at the very least, not expecting to see, or at least find his brother alive, or anyone else for that matter. And then this little possum, who, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, he did get on my nerves, because I don't like people like him that are very like, oh no, we're gonna find them alive, even though it's been 2 years and they're probably dead. So, that's why I kind of give him like the little bitch voice that I give to all the characters that I really don't like, or that I kind of feel there are little bitches. That's not meaning that he's a bad character, it's just he kind of comes off as that, even though he's on the cover. I wonder if it's going to be like a sort of password thing where the main character, or at least the character on the main menu, changes. It just randomly changes, because that would be kind of cool. But as the developer said, that there's only one person that's helping them work with assets, with CG stuff and sprites and stuff, that it would probably be a lot of work to recreate this image with different characters, and then have like the murder weapon, or maybe not the murder weapon. Actually, it could be a murder weapon for this little possum. But that would actually be kind of cool. Again, it would be kind of like Password, but yeah. Like, I wouldn't mind it if it was like Password, but that's not saying that that's a bad thing. That's actually like a really neat idea. So yeah. Anywho, so what else? I am interested in the story, mostly because, again, it gives me the Thing vibes, but not with it. I mean, actually, it does maybe give me Alien, the Thing vibes, because there's just sort of like, there's references to extraterrestrials or things that are not from their world. And then there's disappearing ships in the Arctic, and then there's conspiracy theories and stuff like that, and then there's this main menu image. So I'm hopeful that there is something at least supernatural or otherworldly involved. But even if there isn't, and even if this turns out to be sort of like a mystery novel where you have to figure out, what happened to the ship, then I'm still here for it. And I am very hopeful that if it does turn out to be the sort of like a mystery where you're trying to figure out what's going on, that it does remain a mystery. Please. And I'm saying this because there is characters which Garret seems interested in. And I really hope that it doesn't become a sort of like, pick your character and you get to romance them. I'm sorry, it's just, I'm so tired of romance. I want mystery, I want horror. I want Echo. No, I'm just kidding, I don't want Echo again. I mean, I want Echo again, but I get that through Arches and through the Smoke Room. So yeah, you Polar Knights, you do your own thing. Well, Polar Knights. But yeah. Anywho, so what are your thoughts on what you currently saw? Do you think it's a murder mystery? Do you think it's maybe a supernatural or otherworldly story? Do you think that there's something else afoot? Maybe government conspiracies or something else? Also, who's your favorite character? Mine? Probably Rufus. Also, talking about characters. My friend, Omar, who either you probably already saw his videos for Neris, or not. I don't know. It depends on, when he gives me all the other videos so that I can upload them. But I had told them about this visual novel, and there's an Irish character, then there's a Scottish character, there's a Russian character, there's the kind of Southern character, then there's the Canadian character, there's Norwegian people, there's probably Polish. There's a lot of people in this visual novel that are not American, so obviously there's a lot of accents that I could be doing. But I don't want to. I don't want to do certain accents because for me, I am very conscious, and very aware of when I am speaking. So when I start trying to do accents, to me it sounds very silly. So in my head it's like, oh crap, I'm gonna sound vaguely racist, aren't I? So if you're wondering why it's like, why isn't he doing a Scottish accent or an Irish accent or something, it's because I don't want to sound weird. I don't want to sound offensive. So yeah, I mean, if I end up doing them, then good for me, I guess. But yeah, if I only knew Irish or Scottish people or Russian people or people that could do better accents than I did, then I would tell them like, hey, do you want to voice these characters for me, so I don't have to. But yeah, anywho, so again, who's your favorite character? Is it the possum? Is it Garret? Is it the shark girl, June? Is it the tigress? Is it Rufus? Or is it Aaron? Oh, a thing about Aaron. I am fairly certain that in the first version of the first part of the game, Garret had a little pride flag next to that little thing that he has on his jacket. So when I was recording this, I was having like a weird moment. So like, wait a minute, there's something missing on his clothes. Because I know he has the pride flag on his underwear. Of course he does. Because he's gay. And but I distinctly remember seeing it on his jacket. So it was kind of weird not seeing it, now. Unless I'm having like a weird one of those like Mandela effect moments or something where it's like, wait a minute, this is weird. Or like, it's not deja vu because that's when you remember something that you've read before or whatever. Anyways, but yeah. So again, favorite character. Write it down in the comments, and then also write down what you think is going to happen, or where you think the story is going, or if you even like the story. Because, right now there's only what I consider to be the prologue, where it doesn't have anything, and just the beginning, where they get on the ship. And yeah. So again, comments. And thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Polar Knight yourself, or get, see if there's updates or whatever, then there will be a link down for the official Polar Knight VN Twitter, which I'm assuming also has a direct link to the the Patreon, so that you can support the project if you like. And honestly, I'm actually thinking of supporting it because I like it. I already support Echo. I already support Remember the Flowers. I might as well support another one because it's tax writing offable. But yeah, anyways, so yeah, if you want to support the project, then you can find a link to their Twitter, either in the description, and a link to their Patreon either in the description or in their Twitter. But yeah, so I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.